Hi all, thank you very much for joining today. My name is Kate and I work in our implementation team here at Accurux. I'm just going to give it a few minutes for people to kind of continue joining. So yeah, bear with me while we just get settled in and get started in a few moments' time. While we are waiting, if you've joined any of our previous sessions in this series, we've always run a poll at the beginning. So I'm just going to start the poll now. And if you are able to, please feel free to just complete that poll. It's really useful to kind of help us guide the rest of the sessions and get some useful insights from you based on kind of where you're at in your journey and move to total triage. So just make sure I'm selecting the right one. And you should now be able to see the poll on your screen. Just a couple of questions there, so hopefully it shouldn't take too long for you to complete. And as I said, I will get started in a moment with the actual webinar. Okay, the number of people joining seems to have slowed down, so I'm going to make a start. Obviously, if you do have colleagues that haven't been able to join just yet, we will be able to share the recording resources with everyone after the session. So if you didn't hear me when we first joined, just to reintroduce myself, my name is Kate. I work in our implementation team here. I'll be running the session today. I'm also joined by two lovely guest speakers who are going to share their kind of experiences with training the team and getting patients ready for the move to total triage. This is week 5 of the 6-week program. Hopefully you were able to join last week. We were joined by Susie and Rachel from Branham Medical Center, and it was led by my colleague Liv. So that session was all about kind of putting the building blocks in place to go live with total triage. We walked through kind of the key changes to help set you up for success, from updating your appointment books and telephony messages to setting up templates and questionnaires in Accurux to, as I said, kind of set you up for success when you do move to a total triage model. So yeah, as I said, hopefully you were able to join the session. If not, you will be able to find the recording on our YouTube channel and in the training center that we have been sharing throughout this series. If you're having any issues accessing the recording or finding the training center, please do just reach out to us. You can either pop it in the chat box today and one of my colleagues will tell you where to go and to find that. You should also be receiving comms after every session. So again, if you're not, please do just let us know. It could be that you've previously unsubscribed from our comms, which is the reason why it's not reaching you. But in those comms, you should receive the recording. You should also receive any of the resources that we talk about during the sessions, along with the slide deck, so you can kind of go back to that. As always, the session's being recorded. So again, this is going to be shared with you, and this is going to happen every single week. And we have one more week left of the program after today. And I've already spoken about it, but please do use that Q&A box. I've got a few colleagues on the line who will be able to help answer questions throughout. We'll also save some time at the end to answer any questions live with our guest speakers. They'll also drop into the chat box as well as we go through, just to make sure that we're hopefully getting through all of the questions and answers as we run through the session. So yeah, please do fire away in there and hopefully all of your questions will be answered. So today, this is all about training the team and getting your patients ready. So a real kind of turning point in the move to total triage. We are essentially preparing patients and your team for that transition. With go live hopefully really close around the corner, it's going to be about building that confidence and making sure everyone knows what to expect when you do go ahead and go live. So by the end of this week, we should have 3 key things done here. So your patients being informed, your staff training session completed, and also your staff have had an opportunity to test reception flow as well. So the goal here, as I said, is really building confidence, reducing any surprises, both internally and externally, and just making sure that everyone understands their role in that move towards the total triage model. So joined by 2 guest speakers from 2 different practices, very different list sizes. So hopefully we'll get some really good insights and perspectives based on what's worked for them and their patient at their practice setup. They'll be speaking through their experiences and training the team and getting your patients ready. So a huge warm welcome to both them and to everyone joining the call today. I'll introduce them now, but I'll also reintroduce them when I hand over. But we're joined by Rebecca. So she is the head of systems and estates at the Ridings Medical Group, which is in Humber, North Yorkshire ICB, and then also Beex, who you may remember from week 2. She's a business manager at Coinsborough Group Practice in South Yorkshire. I'm going to give a short introduction now and kind of talk about setting the scene in terms of training the team. We'll talk through a bit of a simulation exercise that you can do with your team as well, and some tips and tricks that we recommend before and how to kind of run that training session before handing over to Bex and then to Rebecca. So all about confidence here, both for the team and for your patients. We're going to look at practical ways to train staff, how to gather and respond to feedback from both staff and from patients, and then how to communicate the change in a way that builds trust and understanding for everyone involved. So going to cover here how to train your staff effectively, how to train others in how to use it for reception flow, and then also, as I just mentioned, how to run a simulation exercise so that the whole team gets hands-on practice before launching. So some staff training tips, first of all, on how to run a successful training session. Training should feel really realistic and supportive for everyone involved. So one of the top things here is to make sure that you're doing this session in person, really helping with engagement and questions throughout. You'll also want to ensure that you have all of the systems and templates set up beforehand. So we touched on this last week and I believe the week before as well, but making sure that your accurate setup is in place, you have the templates in place, you have questionnaires in place, anything that you're going to need to use for triaging, and really treating it like a real clinic scenario when you do go and run this training with the team. Assign a note taker to capture feedback as well. So just making sure that everyone feels heard during that process. And you can also make improvements down the line as needed, as you may obviously need to retrain later on as well. But most importantly, just really making sure that you're keeping a safe space for questions and mistakes. So everyone feels like, as I said, they are heard. It's a safe space for them to be able to ask any champions or anyone leading the change what's happening and when, so that they do feel confident in making that move to total triage. And then finally, just touched on it, but having a champion to lead that change and someone who can really step in, observe the flow, observe what's going on, provide clarification for everyone else as they go through, and just making sure that no one feels too stuck in what's happening and when. Reception flow is really key here, a key theme that we have now spoken about for the past 5 weeks and will definitely be touched on again next week. Reception flow being a key component in all of this, with all of your patient inbound going into that one same inbox. So really the backbone of total triage. Every request, whether or not it's come in via the phone, as a walk-in or online, must be routed into that same inbox using that reception flow functionality. You can submit requests on behalf of the patient, ensuring that the same information is captured and it goes into the Accurix inbox, and you can all collaborate from that same space. Consistency is what keeps the system safe and fair. So regardless of whether or not it's put through online or it's come through as a walk-in or over the phone, you are having that consistency to ensure that all patients are patient requests are being looked at with the same amount of information and in a fair and consistent way. First challenge here is making sure staff can confidently follow this process. So what does this look like for staff? The second part is then helping patients understand why it works this way as well. So staff need to understand how to submit reception flow requests, and then also be able to articulate to patients why it's important that it's working this way and why they should use that online form if they are able to do so. So here, I'll just caveat with, you may experience some pushback with concerns about gatekeeping. So it's really important to ensure that everybody within your practice is able to navigate those pushbacks that might come through. Preparing staff with really clear explanations and empathy will be essential here so that they can navigate that. We do have a reception script that I've pulled into this deck, and that was actually shared by Susie and Rachel, who joined us last week. So once you get the deck, you will be able to see that reception script, and it will also be in the resources that we share in that training centre as well. That can hopefully guide you in navigating some of those conversations with patients. So here, this is essentially how those within your practice can get set up with first using reception flow. So making sure everyone has had a chance to test it, everyone understands that flow, they know how to access the right part of the form, and they know how the internal protocol will be used to then start navigating and triaging those requests. So the team needs to be 100% comfortable on the process here. So the first step, hopefully you may have seen this already, but opening the patient in your patient record, selecting triage requests from the Accurix inbox. So in the bottom left-hand corner, once you have a patient open, you'll then be able to submit a request on their behalf using that triage request button. And then that form will be open for you to submit that request, complete the form, and then that will flow into your Accurix inbox, either into the unassigned folder or into the specific team folder that you have asked it to go into when you submitted that form. This is a really crucial point now. So the team will need to be very confident in explaining this information to patients, about preparing the team with the right skills and language, but then also preparing patients to know that these requests should be going online when they can do so. Training here should provide scripts, and as I just mentioned, we do have some scripts that can support you. Also really encourage some role-playing scenarios and strategies for really compassionately and confidently just guiding patients who might be more hesitant or refusing to engage with the new process. So we'll have some tips about this throughout the rest of this presentation. And I'll come to in a moment kind of role-playing scenarios and how you can navigate those as well. So here's an example of a script, as I mentioned, shared by Susie and Rachel last week. I won't read this out loud because probably bored of listening to me already, but this is here for you to use, and please do kind of lift and shift any of this information if that's useful for you, and goes on to the second slide here. And as I said, that will also be shared in the resources that you will be receiving. So team supporting that getting the ball rolling now can be really helpful. To make this easier, you could consider starting with a gentle introduction. So consider whether or not you can kick off with a use case early on. Potentially you want to just trial when you are testing, trialing out just admin requests being channeled through reception flow, and then how you can navigate that, letting staff and patients just really get used to the system with low risk cases first of all. Moving on then to the simulation exercise, this is essentially doing a dry run of total triage, where it kind of all comes together and is designed to build that confidence within your practice. So we recommend blocking out 90 minutes to bring the team into a room and simulate real patient requests that might be coming through. And then hopefully by the end of the simulation exercise, staff should feel really confident in their roles and really excited about that change and move to a total triage. So as I've mentioned here, blocking out 1.5 hours to get your team into a room, bring them together, simulate real patient scenarios, and ensure that everyone's left feeling confident with how to deal with the incoming requests as a team and really excited about that move. So we're really ensuring everyone's kind of seen from the same hymn sheet here and feeling as though they know how to manage the requests and in what way and what your internal protocols, as I said, are. So the first 30 minutes of this session start with a bit of a refresher, reminding everyone kind of the why here, so why you are making the change, reminder of the current pain points that you have, reminder of the benefits of moving, and then reminder of the goals that you might be setting that you want to achieve in your move to total triage. Then walking through each role's responsibilities and using handouts if helpful. So I'm going to come to this in a moment, but just really making sure that everyone's explicitly clear of their roles and responsibilities is crucial at this point. And then move into practice. So having staff acting out patient and receptionist roles, submitting requests and processing them together. So the aim here is to make sure the team leave feeling not just prepared, but as I said, hopefully really excited about the move to a total triage as well. So using the session to ensure that everyone is really clear on that workflow and the process map. So how might they signpost to pharmacy first? Who is able to hold an MSK appointment? Making sure, as I said, everyone is working in the same way here and they know exactly how to manage the requests that are coming through. So this table is an example of how roles should be clearly defined. So potentially you'll have a version of this within your practice that everyone can then refer back to. Everyone needs to know not just their job, but also how and when to refer patients to other services as well. So really the clearer the roles that you have here, the smoother the flow is going to be throughout. Then taking 15 minutes to ask everyone to submit a reception flow request as a test patient. So really practicing using reception flow, making sure everyone is aware of how that flow works, who will be submitting those requests, what it looks like from your perspective if you are submitting requests on behalf of a patient, and then how that flows into the Accurix inbox and then is managed based on the clinical information that's been shared. So we suggest here working in pairs and swapping between receptionist and patient, submitting test requests and then seeing what happens end to end. The goal, again, is to build that confidence and see the system in action so that you've already gone through the flow and you know exactly what to expect on your go live day. So if possible, submitting the request with your own phone number here can be really useful so that you can see that end-to-end flow and patient journey as well when it is actioned. These test cases here, again, you'll receive this when you receive the recording and the deck that I'm going through now. But you can use these and they've been designed to cover different scenarios. So we've got urgent symptoms in here. We've got routine admin. We've got long-term conditions, also mental health. Use them to see how the workflow applies in real life. So you can put through any of these requests and then work out how you would navigate any of those within your inbox and alongside one another. Then taking 30 minutes to process the test cases as a team. So while practicing the flows, ensuring everyone can see what would happen at each part of the process. Once those requests are queued in the inbox, working through them and making sure that everyone is aligned on how you would then action those requests that have come through. And then we suggest taking 30 minutes. So this is the same 30 minutes, starting from the bottom of that triage list, checking patients and matching carefully and recording those outcomes using our outcome reporting. Really step by step, just showing staff exactly what happens at each phase and ensuring that everybody, as I said, is doing the exact same flow here and they would manage those requests in the same way. So starting from the bottom of that list, matching the patient if needed, double checking if the patient has been matched incorrectly for any reason, saving to record, opening the patient up in your clinical system, and then working through how you would navigate the clinical information that's been shared by that patient. Here then we are talking about depending on your workflow, you might want to have multiple different stations here. So you might have a reception station, a triage station and a specialist station. Rotating staff between these roles can really help them understand handovers and see the bigger picture and kind of the different responsibilities that lie within your practice of how the requests flow through the system. And then finally, a wrap up. So wrap up to discuss what's worked and what didn't, really capturing that feedback. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you have a note taker who's writing down any feedback or questions that come throughout the scenario simulation, making tweaks to the process as needed, and really reassuring staff that it's normal for the process to evolve. It won't be 100% right on day one. You will need to make changes as you go and kind of iterate on that process. So making sure that everyone is aware of that and can kind of feel reassured that tweaks will come as you go and as you kind of evolve and get to grips with what's working for your practice and what isn't. And then ending with a recap and reminder of the go live date to again just ensure that everyone is bought into what's happening here and when, and they know what is expected of them, and also how they can then start articulating this to patients if they are then getting questions from the other side. And now I want to hand over to our guest speakers. So first of all, we are joined by Beex Cottey, who, as I mentioned at the beginning, she is a business manager at Conisborough Group Practice in South Yorkshire. You may have seen her on week 2, but today she's going to be talking about training the team and getting patients ready. So Beex, thank you very much for joining us once again. And I will let you take over. I will move us on to the next slide where you can talk through a bit of an overview of what your practice looks like.
Perfect. Thank you. And hello, everyone. And thanks for having me back. Again, to talk about the way in which we did that initial implementation with staff and patients and give you some tips that you could take away and use in your own practices. And Rebecca will come on afterwards because we have 2 very different practices, different patient populations and sizes. So there's no one size fits all. Just keep that in mind and do whatever you think will work for your patient population. We've a patient list of 12,000. We're in a very deprived area of South Yorkshire, but our practice is well doctored. So we have 6 partners, 2 salaried, 12 registrars, paramedic, physician associate, A&P, 2 nurses and 2 HCAs, amongst other ARS staff from our network. We've moved to total triage quite some time ago. It was about 21-22 the year that we moved, so we were coming out of the end of the pandemic, and we needed to implement ours quite quickly. So anybody that's heard this story before, our phone lines weren't working, we changed providers and we needed to move very quickly. However, the way in which we trained the staff and informed the patients we wouldn't actually change. So despite the fact that we were doing this under pressure, we would probably do this in exactly the same way, but allow ourselves more time and grace to learn, not quite so under pressure. And that's the nice thing that you guys have, is that now you have a bit of a grace period in which to get these things and let staff feel confident rather than feeling like they have to learn on the fly or on the job. So can we move to the next slide? Thank you very much. Some people may have seen this before. This is one that I've used in plenty of presentations because it was the roadmap that we used within our practice. So in terms of our staff, we made it explicitly clear to them that we are taking the pressure off them for this transition. There is no pressure around how many patients are in the telephone queue or how long the queue is at the front desk. We don't want them to feel under pressure. We want them to take the time that they need to be able to either complete the triage form on behalf of a patient, as we've just been hearing Kate explain, or to explain to the patient on the telephone and talk them through the process of using the link that they may send out, or using the website link that you might have embedded, or the NHS link, NHS app link. So it's about saying slow down and guide the patients through the process as well, because you are new to this, they are new to this. You can help each other. So in terms of your staff, again, a lot of things that you've heard presented from the accurate side of this from Kate. Run test patients, practice using the tools, see what facilities are in there, get used to finding templates of things that you might send back to patients if they've submitted something and you need further information, so that it becomes a really familiar interface. They're happy where to go and where to look for things, and then they're not panicking when they're actually with a patient about where they're going, where to find things and how things work. So keep running test patients and allowing them to do that throughout the day, and at different times of day and with different cases as they come up. The people on the receiving end of that, so the people who will be doing the triaging, same thing. Give them time to go through, look at case studies, and also work with the inputting team, whether they're care navigators, receptionists, whatever you call them in your practice, and give them feedback. So if they are taking information from patients, are they taking the detail that is really needed to triage? Is the patient one of those that's rather resistant to the detail that they want to offer a receptionist? This can be the case. We often encourage our staff to kind of document that. Patient only stated, or it makes it clear that perhaps the triaging doctor needs to gather more information via a follow-up text or something from the patient to get more information before they can be triaged into the appropriate clinician. But have that feedback loop between the staff so that they know they can communicate with each other and they know what each other's expectations are. If everyone's new, then you've got a nice basic starting point. If you've got somebody who already knows Accurix well within the practice, somebody that's kind of already curious or already using it just as kind of one-offs, it depends where you are on your journey, then use them as the person to say, look, we've got somebody with some experience. Are you willing to help train and help navigate the others throughout the system? And use that trickle-down training rather than feeling like you have to have everyone in the room all at the same time. I know that training time within practices can be precious. So, do it in small groups or in a trickle process. So those are some of the things that we did. When it came to patient discussions and talking with them about what we were going to do and why we were going to do it, again, in our case, it was going to be a huge benefit to patients because we had no telephones at the time. But again, same principles, use your social media, use your website, and use your waiting room. So social media, make sure that you have something, if you can, on a repeat. It could be every couple of days, just sending something out that reminds patients that this is going to come. We'd love them to be one of the first to try it, making it an exciting thing. You'll find that some of your younger patients might actually want to be the first to use it. And other people may say, oh, I'm a bit scared by this. That's okay. We're all learning too. Bear with us. We'll be patient with you. You can be patient with us and make it a team thing you do with your patients. So we had social media and we scheduled it so that the reminders went out every couple of days just to say, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, you can help us and it will help you because you'll realize how easy and convenient it is to use. Then the website, again, make sure that you're mirroring the same messages so that wherever people get their information about the practice, they're getting the same message wherever they go. Keep updating that. Have a coming soon banner or a news headline that just says, try this. And if you have everything switched on at the moment because it's part of just running in the background and you're just wanting to have that gradual uptake rather than a one big day launch, then do that. Just encourage people to go on and try it now. Then the waiting room. We find it quite hard for staff to try and persuade people in the waiting room to try the system. However, we found that if you take a patient who is willing to work, maybe you have somebody in your patient participation group, if you have one, or somebody who, if you ask for a volunteer who's used to the system or is willing to use the system, and then for them to persuade their peers, as in the other patients, to try and use it. We find that they were more receptive to that. It's a bit like saying, oh, well, if he can do it, then maybe I can do it. It was a really good kind of nudge into, this is what's happening. People are already using it. Maybe I should try it. you'll always get some who are resistant and some who don't have the access or can't access. So we've got to bear that in mind. But using patients in your waiting room to encourage each other to use the online system, we found was very beneficial. Lean on the supplier. This is Accurix. They're there. They have taken hundreds of thousands of practices through the process before. I'm sure if you're attending all these webinars, but they have loads of resources that you can use to help with your comms. Lean on them and just say, what have other people done? Can I use this image? Can we, I'm sure they're happy to share images and pictures and things that you can just use. And we also plastered them over every surface you could find. They were on the tables in the waiting rooms, they were stuck to the desks, they were everywhere, just so people got used to it. And it was taken up very, very quickly. And people, once they try it, they realize how easy it is and how convenient it is. They will keep doing it. Okay, so those are the main things that I would say for patients. Those were the best things that we tried. And those nudges, as we were talking about, persuading each other. Did you know X number of our patients use our online triage? Why don't you? It's one of those suggestions that make people feel like they're missing out on something by not using it is a good tactic. It happens to us all within our social media constantly. We have that fear of missing out on something. So optimize that and nudge patients. And as your numbers grow, you can see from your Accurix dashboard how many people are using it. Just keep increasing those numbers. Put it on your television in the waiting room and tell people that the numbers are increasing and that they should try it too. Again, nudging people in the right direction. Just to kind of, I don't want to talk too long because Rebecca's got loads to say, I'm sure. When we're talking about staff as well, going back to the staff, we had little huddles where we could feed back to each other about what staff had discovered or felt they had discovered for themselves while using the system. So they would say, oh, I did this today, I didn't realize it was there, or did you know about this, or I'm using this message a lot. So they would share with each other, because although we said, everything's there, everyone can discover it for themselves, instead of teaching everybody everything, allow them to go into the system and try things for themselves. That discovery is sometimes for some people a much better way of learning than just being told what to do, and then they feel limited about what they can do with the system. So use each other to kind of say, you may know this already, but I did this for the first time with Accurix today, or I find that filling this in this way has been most beneficial. Just share those ideas just for a couple of weeks, and people will pick things up from each other. That helped significantly within our Care Navigator team, rather than us, yes, we gave some formal training, but rather than trying to teach them absolutely everything, we gave them the basics to get started and then encouraged them to teach each other as they went along. And one thing just to finish on that Kate mentioned as well is about the tweaking things. Like I said, we started in the year 2021-22, been doing it a long time. To this day, we are still tweaking. This is not switch it on, get going, everyone knows what they're doing, it will stay like that forever. Keep tweaking, keep looking back at your figures, keep talking about pinch points, keep talking about trends, keep talking about your data, keep talking about what works and what doesn't work, and keep that training evolving. You'll find that some people are really good at it, very efficient. Other people that are triaging find it stressful and difficult. They may not be the right person to be triaging. They may not be the right person to be gathering the information, or they might need more support to gather information at the other end to pass along through Accurix to the triager. So keep tweaking, keep checking in with people. And it's a process that goes on. We are still making, to this day, we are at the moment going through a process of how can we make even more efficiencies? How can we make this a better experience? How can we flatten out these trends that we have that don't work for our staffing situations, for example? So don't think once it's done, it's done. Just keep revisiting. It's an evolution rather than a revolution, although it is quite revolutionary. It's an evolution you have to keep going along with and keep making little tricks and tips and making adaptations. As my roadmap says, embrace the feedback. We're not about criticizing anyone or anything. We're about learning together. Then make the adaptations, let it go and see how it runs. And if you have to keep doing that loop of adaptation and change until you've got something that feels comfortable, then fabulous. And it doesn't matter what Accurix tell us, I tell you, Rebecca tells you, or anybody else in any other practice. Be a pioneer of your own practice. Find out what works for you. Make new things up, pinch ideas, adapt, and be the pioneer that your practice needs you to be. I hope that's useful.
Thank you so much, Bex. Yeah, that was great. As always, thank you for joining us. Bex will be around, I believe, until the end. So if you do have any specific questions for her, feel free to just pop them in the Q&A, and she will jump in, and there'll also be a little bit of time at the end, hopefully, to run through any others. I'm now going to hand over to Rebecca. So as I mentioned at the beginning, she is Head of Systems and Estate at the Ridings Medical Group. So yeah, thank you for joining us, Rebecca. I will move on to the next slide so you can kind of run through a bit of an intro to your practice or your group, sorry.
Thanks, Kate. So we are at a completely different end of the spectrum to Bex's practice. 48,000 patients, covering 5 sites in the East Riding area. We've got a very mix of patients, some living in very rural areas, some living close to town centres, and a fairly affluent population, fairly tech savvy. We've got a very high presence of those who are online and using text messaging and that sort of service that we offer. We have got a massive team, a massive clinical resource, really well staffed for partners, salaried GPs, and lots of support staff within the practice. And we moved to Triage in October 2023, having had a really bad run leading up to this. The demand on appointments was just increasing exponentially. Our ability to work out the demand that we needed to put in the day on our appointment system against the routine appointments was just becoming impossible to maintain. Patients had managed to find loopholes in our system, how to book and get appointments that were going on at midnight on the online system, and then our reception had come in and then a massive chunk of the appointments had gone. And the patients were, some patients were finding that they could book appointments. Some patients repeatedly were ringing us, we haven't got an appointment, there's nothing routine, there's nothing on the day. And everyone was not happy with the system, really. Staff were feeling burnout, the GPs were feeling it burnout, and we had masses of patient complaints at this point. Patients were really unhappy, and rightly so. They speak to us, I've been ringing for weeks to try and get an appointment, and now it's become urgent, and what do I do? So we decided to go down this route. We delayed a bit. Rowe, one of our GPs, is also on the Teams call, and he will explain, it was a really bad position for us at that moment in time. So we decided to go down the triage route, and we were supposed to go originally in the September of 2023. So like Bex said in her plan, be prepared to change plans, because if something happens and all of a sudden you haven't got your rotas ready, you haven't been able to free up that capacity, you haven't been able to change your appointment system to align it to this new system, be prepared to delay it. We delayed it a month because we knew if we'd have gone in September, we had so much sickness, a lot of things happened at last minute. The access team that we had were just not prepared to go at that point, and it would have been detrimental. It would have been really bad start to it, and we did want to go full hog with it. We were trying to do a run in, so we just delayed. Fortunately, we hadn't sent the messages out to patients, so it allowed us to just move that whole time plan on. The big thing is we have to block out so many appointments to allow for this transition, and during that time your staff are going to get quite a bit of grief because they're maybe not able to book into appointments, and you might have to say, look, we're transitioning over to a new appointment system, and we're going to be doing e-consultations, triage, and it's going to be different. So this is the communications that are going out. We can't help you at the minute, but please, you are going to have to call back, and that's a difficult period as well for staff. Communication amongst the team is definitely key. and it's not just the team who are involved in the system, it is also, we've got a dispensary team, we've got a secretarial team, we've got care coordinators, we've got the care navigators. It's every single team needs to know about this change and what's happening. They don't need to necessarily know the full detail of it, but they need to know why we're doing it, how we're going to do it, the timescales, and they need to be positive in giving those messages out to patients. And those messages, as Bex said in her presentation, they need to be consistent. So they need to be consistent across all platforms. It's really important that as a team you have time to plan all of this, and you get your core team together to sort of discuss how it's going to happen. We did things a bit differently. Our reception were at absolute melting point. We had loads of sickness. The telephone calls that were coming in were, the call wait time was massive. So we couldn't see how that team would be able to go with this go live of going with AccuRx and the triage system. So we did a bit of a split system whereby reception were doing the main practicing and the putting through of the patient request. So we helped all patients who were putting through a first time request. And then we said, next time, please try using the system yourself. And we sent them the link. And then we had, we pulled a resource of admin, including myself and some of the other managers, and we did our AccuRx admin. So the way we set it up, going back to Kate's slide on how you can set your system up, and this again is adaptable. You can do it however you want. You've got to do it how it fits your system. As a 5-site practice, all of our requests were going through a single telephone system and a single practice system. And what we would do is all the medical requests would come into the GPs, who were the triage GPs, and they would process those requests, and then they were going through to an admin team who was 3 people constantly through the day, and they were booking the appointments, sending the links, and then sending on any further requests to other teams. The admin requests that come in through AccuRx, we have a separate team doing that. So it's not the same team under the pressure. The problem is with 5 sites and the number of staff we've got, the appointments will go really quickly. So when you're thinking about where your appointments are in the system, it's really important to think about your same day appointments, where they'll be in the day, because you don't want to lose any of those appointments because your team's not quick enough, or the triaging GP is not quick enough, triaging the requests that are coming through. The other thing that Bex said was about work with the people who maybe already know AccuRx, who are confident on the systems. It goes the same with the GPs. Go with the GPs who are using AccuRx, hopefully already, to send those little messages out to patients about medication, and are used to communicating with patients, because those are the ones who are already familiar with the system. And like the way we set up with the managers and the admin support to do the system, we were tweaking it all the time. So you can do as much planning as you can beforehand, but you will find that you end up adapting your templates that you've set up. Hopefully there's practices that you're talking to, that you're sharing templates with, to work out what template messages and responses you're sending to patients when those requests are coming through. But it's really important that you keep changing those all of the time. Obviously, leading up to us going live, we did loads of work with the patients. We didn't have, we had the social media, we had our website, we put QR codes in the waiting rooms, we did a massive campaign beforehand, and it's about those messages going out in plenty of time. And we also did a massive AccuRx batch message to everybody to say, this system's coming in, this is the link to our practice, and that's the same link you're putting on your website, and you're putting then on an AccuRx message to be able to send out to any patient who's ringing in to say, next time, sort of try this. And the other thing is, when you're changing your messages, so when things are adapting as your process is changing, like Bex said, make sure that you keep updating the messages you've got out on your Facebook and your website. That shouldn't stay the same. That needs to change as your processes change in practice. So if you suddenly change, these requests need to come in this way, or there's a message for patients. One of the messages we said was, try and always put your request in on a day, especially for urgent appointments, try and put the request in on the day that you can attend for an appointment, because we would be ringing patients when we first went with this system within half an hour of their request coming through. They'd have gone in the shower, they'd have gone to the shops, and then they weren't available to attend the appointment, which was quite frustrating for our team. And we also adapted messages like a message to a patient to say, we've tried to ring you to offer you an appointment today. We need you to ring back, and things like that. You're always adapting those things. It is very much, when you go live, all hands on deck. So make sure you have got some extra capacity in your team, whether that's a manager, whether that's somebody from the secretarial team who might have a bit of extra time. Just try and bring in extra people. If people can be brought in as extra, as overtime or whatever, try and get them in, so you're already setting yourself up that you've got that extra capacity to support. It might even just be somebody who's on AccuRx admin or the triaging GP, and making sure that they've got somebody who can switch over them, just so they can go and have a lunch break, have a cup of tea, have 2 minutes away from the screen. Or it might be for somebody just to go and do that lunch run, do a cup of tea and things like that, to do that extra support. We had regular meetings. We some days would have weekly meetings, some days we'd have daily meetings to communicate things back, but we kept it as a core team who were always doing that feedback and then discussing, because everybody was in the loop with what we changed previously, what might need to change this time, what the we needed to do from a contractual side of things, because you don't want things changing too much that you suddenly find you're doing things that you shouldn't really be doing from a contractual point of view. And we were prepared where things didn't go to plan, that we'd look back at that process. Why didn't it go well? Pull the phone recording as to whether the information that had been taken from the receptionist was correct, whether they missed something. It might be that GP had missed something on the triage. It could be anything, and then feed it back to the team to make sure that you're constantly feeding back things. The biggest thing for us in having so many clinical staff was that the triaging GPs that were in the room, they share a room, they work together, they're talking constantly about things, and they're sharing the requests that are coming through. They have a sheet, a matrix of skills. Each paramedic, AMP, physician's associate, might be certain GPs who can see what. So, and also exceptions like this person can't see under 10s, so that when the GP is doing the triage request and sending that to the admin team, they're sort of saying, don't book in with this person, it needs to be this person, it needs to be a female clinician. And one of the things we found as a result of this, patients are getting that consistency of care back, because it might be that GP's in that day and they want to see that particular GP, and they can obviously put that request for that a named GP on there. And it means hopefully the clinicians are seeing the appointments that they need, which we didn't have in the old system. Reception, trying to remember what each advanced nurse practitioner does, it was difficult. Now the GPs have that responsibility, and particularly for a 5-site practice, the GP on triage needs to be very quick and know what appointments they have across the full system, across the sites, and be very adaptable through the day to be able to look at all of that. So I know we've talked a lot about the training and the processes for the admin team, but your GPs need to have that training and that input, and think about how they're triaging. And it might be that you have like a clinical meeting to discuss how things might be triaged by them. But again, get the ones who are quick, because if you've got anyone who's a bit slower on the computer, they can do it later on with somebody who's quicker, but get them trained up and confident, and then hopefully your team's confident with that system. Bex mentioned about social media. As you're going along, it's really important to share feedback, especially if you're making changes. But we also put we got a lot of feedback for our friends and family. Within the first week, I've put requests through. I had a phone call within half an hour, and I've been seen by a GP. Wow, this is amazing. We put those anonymously onto our Facebook page, and by word of mouth, by somebody having had a real good experience, this has just taken off massively, to the point where if you ask the patient if they'd want to go back to the old system, they wouldn't. Our staff definitely wouldn't want to go back to the old system. We get about 600 requests on a Monday, and on average about 500 every other day of the week, and we're doing about 10,000 requests a month. Which is a massive percentage of our population every month, which is excellent. yeah, I think that's probably all I've got to say, Kate.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, really appreciate you both joining and sharing your insights and experience having trained the team. Really helpful. It doesn't actually look like we've got any other questions in the Q&A. Quite a lot of them have been answered as we go. So if not, we can all have 10 minutes back, unless there are... Oh, Liv, I can see that your hand is up.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, all good.
I just thank you so much, both of you, first of all, for joining and giving your experience. I wondered if we could hear a bit from your perspective and how the GPs kind of settled into this triaging process, and if there was kind of any challenges along the way there.
Yeah, so obviously, as when I first proposed the idea to the GP partners, there was a bit of, oh, we don't like change. But at the point we were doing on calls, everyone was at the brink of burnout. So it wasn't sustainable anymore. So I'm a very visual person, so I used to do multiple flow charts. I think Bex and I had like every single whiteboard had like a different flow chart of how the patient's journey would be. And trying to trim it down and come to a point which agrees with how we would work. Once presented, the partners were on board. We first started partners only, just to get the Accurex flowing. So we didn't have salary GPs involved in the beginning. Mondays were always the heavy days. So we always put like what we personally call the heavy hitters who could Accurex pretty fast, because you got the bigger numbers on the Monday. Tuesday still high, but as the week goes, the numbers tailed off a bit. But as one of the access leads, I was always around every day for the first week or 2 weeks of the launch, just supporting the other GPs, supporting the reception staff. Any queries used to come to either Bex or myself, and we used to deal with it. One thing Bex also did was, again, social media, which even Bex mentioned, was putting out Mythbusters every day of the first week, and that was really good. So even if you go back historically on our Ridings Medical Group website, they'll still be there, which just feedback, what numbers we were doing, Mythbusters, what to do, that everybody doesn't have to submit an Accurex at 8 a.m. We'll always get to you. So stuff like that. But partners came on board and nobody would go back to the old system. Nobody would want the on-call. And it works really good. Yeah, so I would always vouch moving over to Accurex.
Well, thank you for that. And just a quick follow-up before, I know Bex has got a hand up. We get quite a lot of questions about calibration between GPs and making sure that all GPs are triaging in the same way. And yeah, each request is kind of dealt with consistently. How did you reach that in your practice? And yeah, how did you kind of go through that training? Is it a continuous thing?
I think it's a continuous thing. There's always going to be a different thought process with each GP. Some people your degree of risk, isn't it? And what you can deal with on the day and what you can't, which you think you can safely wait for a few days or a week or 2 weeks. There would be feedback from reception, and that would come to, again, myself, and we would sit down as a team and a clinical team, say, okay, this is the scenario. This is how maybe it would be dealt more appropriately. But that's just an evolving process. Again, I'll refer back to Bex. It's that evolving. But nobody's thought process is going to be the same. It's one of those things. But how risk averse are you? But you want to be safe. You have to be safe. And again, having a look at what you have available, what clinicians are available, so which GPs, registrars, ACP. So again, having that knowledge before you start, so at least you can direct the appropriate patient to the correct person as well. So you're not double booking. So again, yeah, it's just the evolving process for that. But that's training.
Thank you, Ruth, and thank you so much for joining us as well. Great to hear from you. I can see one other hand up, Bex.
I just wanted to highlight to any of the listeners, watchers today, that you've got the opportunity to there are two types of ambassadors that can actually help you with this process. Should you have anybody that's not confident who wants to see it in practice, you have Accurix ambassadors in your area likely. Contact Accurix, find out who your local ambassadors are, Accurix ambassadors. They often host or do webinars or screen shares, or they will do practice visits. I was saying just before we started this webinar today, we have practices that come in. The doctors want to shadow or sit with just for a little bit, whoever's doing triage for the day, just to see how it's done, ask questions, get a feel for it. And then often at the same time, the non-clinical staff are talking with me or my care navigation team about the process, the patient flow, how they cope with it. So tap into those. And the other thing is, pretty much every ICB in England now also has a peer ambassador that is provided, whose also main focus right now is this modern general practice and total triage. So reach out to your ICB and find out about those, just so that the burden isn't all on one practice to provide the support. But yeah, reach out to Accurix, ask who your local Accurix ambassador is, and reach out to your ICB and find out who your local peer ambassador is, and get as much help as you need. You are not on your own in this. Thanks.
Thank you, Bex. Yeah, no, fantastic to hear that. And we'll share further information about how you can access the Accurix ambassador scheme in our follow-up, so that you can, yeah, go ahead and book in for one of those sessions, either remotely or in person, as Bex just mentioned. I think then that is all. I mean, I'll keep the chat open for a minute or two, as we've got 3 minutes left in case anyone does have any final questions. But thank you all for joining today. As I mentioned at the beginning, everything will be shared with you. Any issues, any further questions, do just reach out to us. You can reach out to customer.success@accurix.com and one of us will get back to you. And hopefully we'll see you next week for week 6, final week of the programme. Thanks all very much for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks all. Glad it's been helpful. Fab. Right, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you very soon.